Today I'm showing you a book that was very important for me to learn to crochet. As you can see, it's a very old one. It doesn't even have the front cover anymore. This is a very well-known crochet book in Finnish by Maaria. Most people who crochet in Finland would recognize the name. This particular one was printed in 1950, but there's lots of reprints, even just in the recent years. Why it is so important for me is that it's the one my mother had, and it's the one that I used as a little girl in the late 60s. So I wasn't even at school yet when I learned to crochet. And the difference really between how people learn to crochet now and then is that there aren't any written explanations in this. There are only photographs, close-up photographs. So I learned to crochet by counting all the stitches and learning to recognize from the photo each stitch what type it was. If it was a treble, chain, double treble, whatever. And having learned to crochet this way has been very beneficial for me as a crochet designer and as somebody who crochets a lot for fun. Because when you can recognize just from a picture how something works and how the crochet project is constructed, then you are not in any way dependent on patterns. For copyright reasons, I can't show you anything close up here, but I'll show a little bit. Like pages like this here, different lace crochet. And this is how I learned. So I learned to crochet lace before I learned to crochet, say, scarves or something in wool. And why I'm saying this is that this is a skill that anybody can learn. You don't need to be dependent on patterns. I know that nowadays, especially in some countries, people are completely dependent on patterns. They need to know exactly how many stitches, and they would never count for themselves. And that's okay. I mean, if you prefer to do it that way, it's easy. You know, everything is mapped out for you. But then if you want to make changes, you don't necessarily know how to do that. But you can learn little by little also. Crochet in many ways is very mathematical. The stitches, the number of stitches has to add up so that you get it the way you want. Whether it needs to stay straight so that you don't increase or decrease by accident, or if it's something rounded and flat you are making, you need to have the right number of stitches, otherwise it either starts to curl or curve up. But even for a person like me who's not good at maths, it's possible to learn to understand the basics of how it's constructed. After learning to crochet as a small girl, I continued it and learned more all the time. And it was actually only in my 20s that I realized that people are using patterns. I mean, I had used patterns. We had loads and loads of craft magazines in the house, and I had used them. But I had sort of thought that everybody uses them the way I do, that I would maybe take one little bit of a stitch pattern here and another one there and combine them. And I still remember the day when I realized I would have been in my early 20s then, because I had a baby at the time. And how I actually understood that so many people were using the patterns word by word was I had my baby, and she was wearing something I had made out of my head without any kind of instruction from anywhere. And I was trying to explain to this lady that I had done it that way. And then she sort of looked at me and wasn't really sure what I was saying. And then she said, "Oh, okay, so you put those colors into your pattern, that you changed the colors in the pattern." And I realized that she wasn't going to understand what I said. I did not have a pattern of any kind. I had counted the stitches from the very first stitch and made that myself. So this is how I learned that people are using patterns. Of course, now that I'm a crochet designer, it's a good thing. So many people are watching my patterns, buying them or using the free ones online. And a good part of what I'm doing for work now wouldn't exist if people weren't using patterns. So this is my crochet story. And if you are sort of really tied to patterns, I would just encourage you to get off those a little bit and see how much you can do without those patterns. Okay, and my next video again will be some type of a pattern. So see you then.